r/AskReddit. Parents of Reddit, what was the worst thing your kids ever did that made you momentarily wish you didn't have kids? My son was about 7. He discovered my wireless hot glue gun from my craft room. I was using it that afternoon and stopped to make dinner. I didn't shut off the gun. Of course I didn't get to my craft space till much later and noticed it wasn't there. Turns out my son took it and hot glued all the electrical outlets he could find. I mean, all of them. My 4-year-old daughter, at the time, slapped a 3-week-old newborn across the face immediately upon meeting her. My kids buttered our dog. You ever try to catch a freshly buttered chihuahua? One time, they decided it would be fun to play in the bathroom. It just so happened that I left my wallet in a pair of pants on the floor. They flushed about $400 down the toilet. I was talking to an older gentleman at a softball game. My 5-year-old son was standing by us, patiently listening. With no warning, he punched the old guy as hard as he could in the berries. The old guy collapsed in pain. I asked my son later why he did that. He had no explanation. Just wanted to do it. It was early morning, and I was sleeping in my bed. My 2-year-old woke up before me and decided that she was going to wake me as well. She climbed out of her bed, went into the kitchen, made a set of stairs to get the kitchen knives, grabbed a knife, and headed to my bed. She climbed into my bed and stabbed me an inch below my eye. I woke with her holding said knife over my head and her giggling like the bride of Chucky. When the moody teenage daughter was telling her friends at school that we didn't feed her and we were always angry with her and we hit her, and a teacher overheard and reported us to child services, so we had to be investigated for child neglect, and they had to speak with each of our kids and interview them independently. My wife and I are still reeling from that one. When my then 3/4-year-old daughter asked me very loudly why I don't have down boobies like the older lady in the swimming pool change room that was standing right next to us getting dressed, she actually laughed and said to enjoy my up boobies while I still had them, but I was still dying inside. A phase of having constant tantrums and explosive meltdowns over absolutely everything, like hourly as long as she was awake, only lasted a few months, but it was exhausting and depressing, and every now and again just made me wish I'd never bothered. My then 2-year-old puked, which landed in my open mouth. I wish the Goblin King would come for him then. Momentarily, I had to take my wife to the emergency room early one morning for intense stomach pain. Our kids were 2 and 3, and it was about 1 AM, so they went with us. I packed a bag with snacks and toys and loaded everyone up. It was the middle of the night when we got there, but we still had to park a significant distance from the ER entrance. When wife was back with the dog, my son, 2 years old, was running around and playing. He hit his bum to his head lightly and started shrieking an ungodly banshee wail. I decided we would wait in the car and maybe drive around a little and they'd hopefully go to sleep. So I'm carrying the bag and 2 struggling angry demon preschoolers the quarter-mile to the car. At this point my son isn't shrieking, but he's not happy. We encountered an elderly couple and my daughter, 3 years old, looks them dead in the face and says, "Hey, he's not my parent." I was exhausted and frustrated, and my arms were tired from carrying them. I didn't want to stop and have the conversation, and I panicked a little. I sped up, got to the car, loaded them up, and left in a hurry. I didn't get arrested, though. I was glad at the time. Now I'm kinda pissed that the old folks just let me go. I have 2 girls who are about 6 months apart in age, adopted. One morning I woke up to the worst horror. The younger one managed to climb into the older one's crib, and then they proceeded to strip each other naked and paint each other and what they could of the crib and room in each other's shit. Seeing them both standing there grinning gave the phrase "shit eating grin" a whole new meaning. It was a shitty morning to say the least. My kids had a favorite chicken. It got picked on by the other chickens, so they protected it. One time I heard a pathetic noise coming out of a lidless 55-gallon drum. Expecting a squirrel, I carefully glanced in and saw a big 15-gallon nursery pot upside down in there. I lifted it to find a wet, cold and thoroughly miserable chicken standing on a few bricks surrounded by water. My kids had thoughtlessly trapped the chicken in there and then, being 5 and 2, had forgotten all about it. I was livid. Wife and I had a long talk about what it all meant, catastrophizing the whole thing, but in the end it was just two stupid kids not thinking things through because they didn't have the mental agency to understand their actions had far-reaching results. LPT, we are still ducking waiting for them to start thinking things through. My daughter from the ages of about 3-month-old to 3 years old screamed bloody murder every time she was put down and only slept about an hour or 2 at a time. We found out later she has fairly severe autism, which explains it, but the sleep deprivation and lack of personal space I couldn't even shower unless I wanted to listen to her scream like someone was murdering her, was hellish. She's grown out of it now and is an awesome kid, although she is now entering puberty and her emotions are starting to go a bit haywire. But I can sleep for 6 hours straight, which helps me deal with it much better. I'm 15 weeks pregnant and have a 15-month-old. For those who haven't been pregnant before, the first trimester is brutal for exhaustion. With my first, I slept 10 hours a night and took a 2-hour nap every day. These days I'm incredibly lucky if I get 7 hours a night and definitely no nap. So one day about a month ago I barely slept because I had insomnia at night and my kid relentlessly wakes up between 5:30 am and 6:30 am. I was dead on my feet, so I decided to try and lie down on the couch and maybe catch a cat nap while my kid played. He saw me lying on the couch, walked up to me, and headbutted me as hard as he could right in the bridge of the nose. I heard a crunch and could have sworn it was broken. It hurt so badly. In that moment, I regretted every life decision that had led me to that point. My very mature adult response was to burst into hysterical tears and ask him why he's so mean to me. I think that freaked him out more than yelling would have. This happened today. I live in Nebraska, and in March we had a devastating flood. My basement was completely destroyed, and my insurance company wouldn't cover any of it. Outside water, not inside water. So my husband and I spent the last 2.5 months and $6,000 fixing it ourselves. On Saturday we put the final finishing touches on it, ready to have company back over and live in our whole house again. Hooray. Until this morning, my husband checked the sump as he usually does. Everything looked great, basement is dry and all systems go. That was 6:30 am. At 7 am my children all decided to go downstairs and watch a show. That's okay too. Except for when the sump pump stopped working and my basement flooded again. They waited 2 whole freaking hours while watching the water rise before coming upstairs to tell me. So yeah, today's when I wished I didn't have kids. I have twins. They were about 8 when this happened, I think, but they ripped open our next door neighbor's bagged leaves and jumped in them and basically just threw them everywhere and erased all the progress they'd made cleaning their yard up. I was about 8 months pregnant at the time and we had a super kid friendly neighborhood, so I didn't know it had happened at first since they used to run with the kid gang during the day. When I found out, I made them go over and apologize and made them help me bag up all of the leaves again. It was definitely one of the most embarrassing things ever. Oh, and one of them broke a teacher's nose in 1st grade too, so that was a fun school trip. My oldest at the time was 2, she's 7 now. I call this event the shitpocalypse. Decided to roll her poop into a ball and play with it. It was everywhere. Face, hands, carpet, on brother's 1-year-old face. God, it was awful. My very curious 10-year-old had an old phone and was only supposed to be able to make calls and texts only. I thought we put some heavy restrictions on the phone. My husband and I learned the hard way that we didn't. My brother-in-law told me that my son told him that he and his sister watched a video where a girl puts a man's pee-pee in her mouth. Apparently, my daughter had downloaded a porno and decided to watch it while having a sleepover with her younger brother, who was 4. She said she didn't know her brother was awake and watching. I wanted to quit being a parent that day when my brother-in-law told me what happened. My oldest son, now 4, started biting and hitting everyone starting at 18 months. He would get so angry at any perceived injustice that he would shake. He didn't have many words and has always been on the later side of milestones. As soon as we would start to be concerned, he'd suddenly be able to do things. He's the epitome of a Sour Patch Kid whose emotions could turn on a dime. We got him into occupational therapy last year because he couldn't tolerate loud noises and a lot of textures anymore. He started regressing and wouldn't climb stairs. He was fearful and angry. I reduced my hours at work, cut my salary significantly, and took him to OT every Monday. We did everything the therapist suggested. He's a completely different kid now. Some of it is probably normal development that comes with having a wider vocabulary, but he's able to voice that he's uncomfortable before losing his she. A year ago I thought I must be a horrible parent. I thought my kid was a terrible person and I didn't know what to do. He has a lot more emotional regulation, confidence, and coping skills. We enjoy each other's company, and I'm no longer a punching bag. I regretted becoming a parent for 18 months straight. Aside from good moments here and there, OT saved our relationship, and not to be dramatic, but probably my life. Since having his little brother 5 months ago, I've gone through terrible postpartum depression and been through a super traumatic event causing PTSD. I've hit rock bottom and I have nothing to give to anyone but my kids and work to stay employed. If things between my oldest and myself weren't so good, I'm not sure I'd have anything to give. Sorry for the novel. TLDR, OT is a lifesaver. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.